Are you fed up, America? Are you tired of the direction this country is going? Welcome to my podcast, It Ain't Right, where we dive deeper into the most pressing issues facing America today.
That ain't right. No. I'ma lead you to the light. I'm gonna go without a fight.
Kate Monroe, CEO of vetcom, also CEO of Monroe Media, and the host of It Ain't Right. And today I'm very excited because what we do at vetcom is to help veterans, and I finally get to talk to somebody who I believe goes out of their way to educate the veteran community. I have with me today Clay Simms. He's also a Marine Corps veteran, so hoorah, semper fidelis, glad to have him today. He does all of the content creation for the CivDiv, which many of you know. He has 40,000 veterans that tune in to watch all of his good materials.
How do you get a 70% rating for mental health? Now, this is some very serious stuff. Follow the policy, follow your own rules on the disability side of the house.
So he and I are going to have a big discussion today about things you need to know as veterans and sort of where is this industry going and what should you be doing as vets. So thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm definitely pumped to support you in any way I can.
Well, thank you very much. So I got to ask you, what got you doing this in the first place? Did you just see a hole that you needed to fill? What made you do all this content?
Yeah, so I won't explain this in 30 minutes. I'll try and be as fast as I can. I left the Marine Corps in 2019. I served for 10 years. And when I went through Transition Readiness Seminar, the Marine Corps has TRS, the rest of the services have TAP, the Transition Assistance Program. My TRS was not good, and that's the nice way to say it, to be honest with you.
Mine didn't.
And we had a DAV rep who came and did the VA benefits class, and it was, hey, there's burial benefits, there's healthcare benefits, and then there's disability benefits and education benefits. Come stop by my office and we'll talk.
Yeah.
That was basically the brief. So I stopped by his office, and he was a very old gentleman, like in his 70s, maybe 80s. And I'm not hating on his age, but his ability to work on a computer just didn't exist. And so I went to him and didn't get help. I ended up going right next door. I'm in Virginia right now. The Department of Veteran Services for Virginia, which is a county state VSO, they helped me initially. And it was that we submitted 3 claims. It was about a 10-minute appointment. I really had no opportunity to speak about anything. I also didn't know what I wanted to speak about, right? You don't know what you don't know. And so I got rated, I believe, at 70%, maybe 80 in 2019. And then I went back to the VSO and was like, hey, I know there are more things that I would like to submit, because after going through the CMP exam process, I was like, oh, okay, I think I understand what I can claim now. And I was told, hey, you're at 70% or 80, whatever it was, you should be happy. And that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I was infantry for 5 years, did multiple deployments to Afghan and Syria. Then after that, I went psychological operations in support of the SOF community. So I've done my fair share of deployments, and I just felt like it was weird being told that. I'm also a really big nerd, and one thing about psychological operations is you have to read government policy, which is probably the most boring thing in the world. But I can read, right? And so I start reading 38 CFR, the -1, the -5, and then pretty much just learned the process, submitted my own claims. I was rated 100% PNT shortly after that. I had reevaluations. I went through the entire process. And then also at that same time, one of my friends went with a company, and they charged 6 times the increase. You can do the math there.
Wow.
And he went from 0 to 100, and he paid about 22 grand. But it capped out at 15 grand, I believe. And this veteran specifically, he had 3 kids. He had no job, leaving the Marine Corps, going to civilian life. And that 15 grand he could have really used. And I talked to him, and I looked at all his claims. He also has the same infantry PSYOP background that I do. And I was like, man, you have the evidence. Like, your case was super easy.
Yeah, you did
And
not
you
need someone to
basically just
steal
gave, yeah. So that right there, that moment is, I saw a gap in education. I'm also a curriculum developer and instructor. I'm a federal employee for the Army now. And so just knowing how to develop curriculum and talk to a camera, right?
Yeah.
And teach students. I pretty much made the YouTube channel, made a few videos. My very first video got about 100K views. And that's when I realized, I was like, hey, people need this. I didn't even know you could monetize YouTube back then. I was just I was some kid, in his basement. I'm still in my basement right now doing YouTube videos. I started that in 22, and then now I'm here 2 years later. I'm this close to being full-time content creation, and it's
Wow.
really just on the basis of educating and informing veterans. I hope that wasn't 10 minutes long, but that's the story of where I'm at
No,
today.
I actually appreciate that you shared the whole journey. I mean, I
Mhm.
tried to I didn't get anything when I got out. I got out in 2001. It wasn't until 2011 I actually tried to use my GI Bill. It expired like a month before I was going to use it.
Yeah.
And my husband said, "Well, there's this program called Voc Rehab, but you have to be rated for disability." That's what actually made me go, or I would not have done it. I didn't think I deserved it. I was just like, "Oh, I'm going to get the bare minimum so I can get Voc Rehab." And then it came back after the DAV. It was about 15 months or so that it took for me to get that first rating. Nobody told me I could get rated for more. Nobody told me I could get rated for my mental health. I was assaulted. I had all these things like you that nobody was ever like the DAV guy. He just looked at my record, made the claims from my record, never asked me one single question. And then I thought that's how it goes. And I was willing to walk off into the sunset. And then later, before I came up with VetCom, somebody said, "You were assaulted in the military and you are not rated for your MST or your PTSD." I said, "No, they didn't file for it." They said, "Well,
Mhm.
you should file for it." And so through many trials, I got myself to 100%. So God bless you for what you do. I love that. I watch your content all the time, personally, and I have to applaud you really because sometimes when I'm trying to develop content, I do shorter content, micro content.
Mhm.
I will watch one of your videos and go, "Okay, I got it. I'm going to say all. I'm trying to say all this in a minute. Get the
Nice.
information out there." But I hope that we can do some things for you. I really like doing things with fellow veterans, especially fellow, Marine Corps veterans. So
Yeah, yeah.
before you and I started, we were having a little sidebar conversation. So I want to have a little talk about some of the veteran service organizations, the bigs, and we'll limit it really to the VFW, I think, and the American Legion. So
Mhm.
there's only about 1,800 or so accredited, service officers. Meanwhile, there's 14 million people who are not rated at all. Have you ever
Yeah.
done the crazy math? What would happen if only they could make claims? How many claims they'd have to make, like in a 10-year period? Do you
No, but it would be a ton, especially from, I really relate to the GWAT era, so that's really what I focus on is that post 9/11 era. In just that one era alone, with a 20 plus year war, that amount of claims would be insane. That's not even including everything pre
Oh,
2001, right? Or the Gulf War, Vietnam era. It would be unmanageable, really.
yeah, and then I think it's, if you look at the two acts that are trying to pass the Guard Act, versus the Plus Act, the Guard Act would create a scenario, I believe, of a 10 to 20-year backlog. And we would basically be saying it's okay with us if a whole generation just goes in the grave without any help. That's how it
Mhm.
feels to me. So I think you and I talked about the differences between the VFW and the Legion versus, some of the paid organizations. What is your feeling of what a veteran should do? Do you think they should be able to go free or fee, or do you think something different?
Yeah, so it's definitely not a white and black answer. It's a super intricate, complicated topic, and I think we should set some ground rules
Yeah,
first. So first, VSOs, like the VF, national level VSOs who are accredited by the VA, they are important.
agree. Agree.
And no one would, I would caution anyone from saying that one can do better than the other. They definitely serve their purpose. They're on Capitol Hill constantly. They also have a disability benefit side of the house. In the same breath, though, to say that only VSOs should be submitting initial claims, I think would be not really a disservice, wouldn't be the right word. It's just not manageable, right? That also assumes that every single accredited VSO with the national level is by my definition, what a good VSO is, right? Someone who can't turn on their computer to submit claims online is not a good VSO, bar none. And so, do you have VSOs out there? Absolutely. Do you have stellar rock star VSOs out there? Absolutely, right? So that's VSOs. On the claims consulting side of the house, it's also the same. I would caution anyone from saying that they do not help veterans. People can disagree or agree with the company's what they do and how much they charge. That's your prerogative. But the facts are they do help veterans get increases. if they didn't help veterans get increases, they wouldn't be as successful as they are, right? And so now we have this claims consulting company who's really working unhinged that can charge 5 times, 6 times the increase, going from 0 to 100%. And I don't like doing math in public, but it's about 36, 37 for 100%, right? You multiply that by six, that is a very large number when it comes to what they can charge. And they may cap it at 15 grand, whatever that case may be, but that's $15,000 for maybe an hour and a half tops work. An hour and a half is a little bit liberal there. It's really about the 30, 45 minutes work on consulting a veteran. And I'm not down with that either. And so, should there be regulation? Absolutely. I think it should be heavy regulation. There's some talks about the Plus Act with a $12,500 cap. I think that's way too much money. I think it should be capped much, much, much more than that. And the same side on the I'm sorry, the Guard Act, that is way too conservative when it comes to only VSOs. There is some middle ground there. I do believe there's got to be regulation, and so regulate the fees that are charged and mandate training for all VSOs and the private side of the house, right? That would be my picture perfect, Guard plus Act
That's
deal.
sort of what we said. We came out with a different piece of legislation that basically is the Disabled Veterans Choice Act. But in the act, if you charge people up front, which is what we do, now you have to be accountable to the veteran because they paid
Hmm.
up front. If you charge up front, the market's going to set the price. Veterans are not going to pay 8, 9, 10, 11, $12,000 up front. They do not have the funds to pay it. So the industry doesn't even need a cap. If you just tell people you got to, charge up front, the industry will regulate itself, and then there will be fair, you know, pricing. So I want to tell you in less than 1 minute what we do, and you tell me if you think that that would be of value to veterans. So what we do is, let's say I
Okay.
talk to you and you saw me on Facebook and you went, "Oh wow, these people seem to be a good fit. What I'm looking for." Somebody would talk to you. They would explain to you our program. They would explain to you the free program and tell you pick your own adventure. You can start for free, of course you can. But if you're looking for a more handheld experience, go with us. So if they decide to become members, we immediately make an appointment and we file their intent to file with them on Zoom. We send them a link where we can share a computer so they can log in on their own, so they can do all that stuff, squash their paranoia. Veterans are very paranoid and they need to keep their information. So they hop on, that person's going to check, can they use this piece of technology? They're going to make sure they can log into va.gov, and we're going to share screen and make their intent to file so that they've been in our system less than 48 hours. We already made the intent to file. We don't want them waiting any longer. And then
Hmm.
in about 10 days, we make their claim filing appointment. And again, they're going to use that same link, hop back on. We're going to log in, share screen, and we are going to take what they did in that 10-day gap, which is we send them a video library with a workbook, with an actual tangible workbook that we made that helps them put their claim together. Because if they've been out a long time, they might not know they can get rated for stubbing their toe or having a headache or having stomach problems. We help them with the top 20 things they can claim. That way they can get their thoughts together. They don't not tell us about their PTSD. They don't not tell us about their, stomach issues. We make their claim. 2 to 3 weeks later, as you know, they get their rating appointments. They can watch our videos that prep them for the exam, not in a disingenuous manner. If you watched our prep videos, you would realize we prepare you to go do the VA's process as prescribed, but so that you understand who you're going to meet. And if they
Hmm.
can't do the videos and they want a one-on-one, we give them a one-on-one preparation appointment to squash their anxieties. And we do this if the first round is unsuccessful, we start that whole process over again and put them through the cycle again, and we go until we get them done. That's what we provide as a company on top of they chat with us. I would say every veteran chats with us at least 3 times a month. They have just some random question. They're driving and they are falling asleep. They are thinking about killing themselves. Like we have 30 people that man the chat, so veterans know, oh, if I reach out to VetCom, somebody's going to talk to me, which is different, I think, than the other organizations or the service organizations. So based on what I told you we provide, what do you think of that value for 997?
Yeah, so there are multiple facets to that, right? So first, the 997 upfront fee, I can agree with that. Not the 997 specifically, but just the upfront fee, and I'll explain why I agree with paying upfront. Is because whenever you incentivize the highest rating, that is where morals and values. The
Well,
lines start to become blurred, right? And I don't want to go too deep into it because these are allegations, but there are whistleblower reports. There are many indicators in the environment. Is probably the best way to say it, where there are fraudulent claims. There are altered DBQs from preferred and in-network DBQ and Nexus letter providers. And there's nothing wrong with DBQs and Nexus letters, but when they're altered to give the perception of a higher rating, that's a whole different ball game, right? And so now charging upfront fee, that's it. I think it definitely alleviates that. And then it would be if you get the increase, sure, you don't get your money, or you definitely pay the fee. If you don't get an increase, I think there would have to be some kind of guaranteed refund if there's not an overall
we have
increase,
a
right?
guaranteed money back proposition. Yep.
Yeah, and then another line of thought is the PII, the personal identifiable information. Assuming that the veteran has, I have many degrees in cyber policy. I also teach cyber integration. That's a lot of nerd stuff. But that's a really big piece, right? And so if the veteran has close hold of their PII, and so when they log into va.gov, although they're sharing the screen, if that PII is withheld from the entity,
Yep.
I can support that well, right? Because what
We
that
let
makes
them
me
log in on their side and we
yeah,
watch. We're not, we don't get it on our side.
what that makes me think of, and I get a ton of comments, seriously. So I have over 450 videos, and videos I posted 2 years ago still get 5, 10 comments a day. Multiply that by 450. Those are the comments every single day, right? And so it is impossible for me to answer every single comment. But you're going to have those who are tech savvy who can log on to va.gov. There's going to be two-factor authentication with your phone, whatever that looks like. DS log on. People are equipped to log on. On the complete opposite, you have those who hate computers, who simply need help logging on. Primarily going to be your Vietnam era for sure, your dependents, and then your Gulf War, your Desert Shield, Desert Storm in peacetime type era. Those are probably going to be the generations that need help, and to discount that would be wrong, right? So
I agree.
I can definitely get on board with the screen sharing with the assumption that the PII is held very, very closely. Um, Outside of those two, I think that would be a good outline for multiple companies to emulate, and that's far better than me giving someone my login information, them switching the two-factor authentication to their end or a joint email, and then, them logging on, having access to my Healthy Vet, having access to my secure healthcare message for my healthcare team, and then obviously my disability benefits. Your Social Security is a part of that as well. That it would be a no-go for me. So outside of, this little box, these parameters that we've set, I would like to see legislation that not only focuses on the income cap, but puts parameters as far as security is concerned for the veteran population, because the veteran population is a targeted population,
Oh,
right?
for sure.
Especially your seniors are already targeted. You put senior veteran on top of that, and you have the Camp Lejeune lawsuit would be a good example of veterans being targeted, which is a whole other subject. But yes,
Well,
to answer your question.
as you know, when the PACT Act came out, all these bad actors, just like cockroaches, just came out of the
Mhm.
woodwork going, "Ooh, woo, we can make all this money," and they don't really do a good job by the veteran. And then I clean up after them. We got hundreds of people reaching out to us a week, like, "Hey, I'm stuck in this and that, and I've been waiting 18 months, I've been waiting 2 years," and we just cut through all that because we're not trying to do anything fraudulent or wait on doctors to give them notes or do all this stuff. We're just trying to help them go through the VA's process. They can go through it very fast. People go, "What are you guys doing? Is it magic?" No. The VA says do X, Y, and Z. If you do X, Y, and Z, you can get rated quickly. If you try to route around them or outthink them, you're going to be met with the utmost force and you're not going to get rated the way that you want. So, I mean, for me, helping veterans, as I said earlier, goes well beyond helping them get paid because that's one piece of the puzzle.
Mhm.
Inflation is absolutely crushing people right now. But in San Diego, we made 283 homeowners because people could finally afford, to buy a home. Like you and I are 100%. I don't know if you have kids, but I have a little guy. I have a 7-year-old, and the
I have
thought that
4
he's
kids.
4 kids. So
4 kids.
talk to the veterans, here on this podcast about what does it do for your family, this pursuit? Because some veterans will say, "Well, I don't deserve it. I'm not going to do it." Talk about the family piece of this and where that comes in.
Yeah, so I like to mention that VA disability compensation, one, I would if I was king for a day, I would just call it VA compensation and take the
Yes.
word disability out of there, but that's off topic, right? VA compensation is it's a multi-million dollar deal for the veteran and their family. And what I mean by that, it's not just the monetary value of 100% with dependents and a spouse, which does matter, don't get me wrong, right? 4,300 bucks non-taxable every month is a big deal. It's like 50 something grand each year on top, especially if you're still working full time. So there is a monetary value. But for me personally, my 4 kids will have access to Chapter 35, which is DEA, and then they get a stipend when they go to school. Now, I'm in Virginia, so the in-state benefit in Virginia, they can also go to Virginia state schools for free. And so all there's 100 other benefits, right? But just that one alone, I cannot pay for 4 tuitions and 4 cars and 4 dorm rooms and 4, beer money, whatever it is that kids do these days, right?
Yeah.
It's not gonna happen. And so just that benefit alone, and but there's still Chant VA, there's all kinds of other benefits, but just those alone, one federal Chapter 35, one state in Virginia, there's a few other states as well that have that benefit. That alone makes it a multi-million dollar deal. And so now my kids are not going to have student loan debt, which is it already sets them apart from everyone else in America, right? And so you talk about generational wealth, and I will die on this hill. It starts with VA compensation for veterans.
Wow.
I grew up paycheck to paycheck my entire life. I'm from a small town in Kentucky. Um, Never really did anything. I joined the Marine Corps, deployed multiple times, had no idea what compensation was. And then all of a sudden, fast forward, 10, 15 years later, now my kids can go to school for free and not have student loan debt. I had to use the GI Bill, which is another great benefit, by the way.
I didn't get to
Not
use mine,
outside
but
of
what has
VRNE, right?
also
Yeah. Yeah, VRNE is bar none right up there, if not above GI Bill. But those benefits make compensation, VA compensation, VA ratings, a multi-million dollar deal. There's still Champ VA and other benefits as well.
So let me ask you this, and we'll wrap up on this probably. What would you say to veterans who fall into one of these three camps that I feel are the three big things that keep people back, the three buckets of ideology? One being, I tried and I failed, right? I tried it before 20 years ago, I failed, so the VA's against me, I'm not going to get help. The next one, just sort of not knowing. They're just sort of oblivious to the fact that you can even get rated like I was for so long.
Hmm.
And then the third, which I think is one of the biggest, maybe makes it 50%, is the I don't feel like I deserve it. Now, we actually say we're not the you deserve guys. I'm not a psychologist. I cannot help you through that. But what I can tell you is you're owed it. You delivered yourself whole. You came out less than whole. Let's get you that delta. Let's get you that of what you are owed. So what would you say to veterans that fall into one of those three categories from your, best advice talking to thousands of veterans?
Yeah, the tried and the failed are probably the most, when it comes to VA benefits, the most vulnerable of those buckets because they put their neck out, they put trust into the Department of Veteran Affairs, and whether they had the evidence or not, because I assure you there are people who submit claims who don't have the evidence. That's also a fact, right? But they don't know what they don't know. And so from their perspective, they really put their trust in the VA. They got smacked, they got slammed, and now they're completely cut off. Maybe prior to submitting that claim, they went to go talk to a VSO and the VSO, had trouble logging into the computer, right? In my situation, that did put a bad taste in my mouth. I had children, I'm transitioning, I had no job at that point. That could have easily been put on the back burner. Those are the most vulnerable first. And what I would say to them is first off, my philosophy in which is not doctrine whatsoever. This is just some guy in his basement, right? I fully believe veterans should understand the process as it pertains to them. So if I'm submitting claims for XYZ, I want to understand how the VA rates XYZ, and I want to understand my evidence for XYZ. Does that take a certain level and ability to think critically and to understand a foreign process like the VA disability claims process? It does, right? And if you have that bandwidth, which I'm a fan of educating and informing, right? Go for it. And if you can't, just like we're not going to leave the Vietnam era and the Gulf War era behind, if you are not able to do that or you don't have time, right? Situation will dictate that. Then that's when you should start, hey, saying, what are some other options I have to get help with VA disability? At that point, I think I would feel comfortable referring that veteran to a claims consulting company, assuming they have those parameters that we had set, right?
Yeah.
First. Now, to the veterans who simply don't know what they don't know, the VA, I try not to bash the VA, but they do it to themselves in my defense. The VA is so bad. It's not even funny at disseminating information. So part of psychological operations is the ability to communicate and disseminate information to influence
I
your
know it's
audience.
purposeful, but I don't want to go that far. But I've been to Washington a lot, and I
Yeah.
feel like it's purposeful, and I don't like that. But
And they'll have their, you'll see billion or millions of dollars poured into their veteran experience outreach, which stands for VEO. Terrible acronym, by the way. Also stands for Violent Extremist Organization, but that's off topic, right? You'll see the veteran outreach. You'll see these email chains. I get them every single week, every single month of a VA breakdown. The VA has YouTube channels, but they are dog water. I'm trying to be politically correct here, right? They are really bad. And their outreach is just not there. And so you have people at the VA whose sole purpose as a public relations or public affairs specialist is to disseminate information, and they're not. So you have an entire 14 million, probably more, right? Of just people who simply don't know.
yeah.
So the unknown unknowns, you don't know what you don't know.
Now, would
There's
you
nothing you
agree
can
with
do
this?
about that.
Would you agree with this though? If they just watched us today and they watched any of your content or my content, which they have, they've watched hundreds of hours of it. Would you agree with the fact that they now do know? So that excuse of I didn't know it existed can't exist if you've watched this podcast even only. So now
Yeah.
turn has to go, okay, well, dang. Now I do know about it. Am I willing to go and help me and my family? Because that's the second part of it. Once you know, what is your action item?
Well, so, oh man, I don't want to get into like the psychiatry of it, but there's a mental block
Of course.
of feeling that you deserve it, and it goes much deeper than that. There's also the inability to complete daily tasks,
Yeah.
and again, going to that post 9/11 era, the most common mental health symptom that I see, even in myself, is the ability to just do daily task. Right? There's memory loss issues there. There's all types of other mental health issues going on. And what's one of the most common rated disabilities for post 9/11 is mental health, right? And so that is a key
Anxiety,
factor
ton
that
of
needs to
anxiety.
be, yeah, that needs to be factored into, why people feel that, hey, I know VA benefits are out there. The Department of Veteran Affairs, second largest federal entity, right? I know it exists, but there's still that inability to do daily tasks. There's also the fact that people really don't understand the benefits a veteran has. We talk 100% PNT a lot because that's like, what everyone wants. That's the clickbait title. I got it. I do YouTube a lot. I understand that. But there are the most important benefit, in my opinion, is at 50%. And so once you hit 50, your healthcare through the VA is completely free, which is you don't see that cost because it's not being paid to you, right? But once you start not paying for healthcare for yourself, especially if you're in there, physical therapy, you take medications, prescriptions, surgeries, whatever the heck is
So health
going
involved.
on,
Yeah.
that expense is zero. Okay, it's absolutely zero. Um, but you don't really see that. So I would say yes, veterans, probably 90-ish% understand the Department of Veteran Affairs or that it exists. the unknowns is, okay, well, what are the benefits and how will that help me personally? I think that is probably the largest issue at hand is the unknowns of how that can actually help me in my day-to-day life. And you couple that with I don't deserve it, with mental health symptoms, with the true unknown unknowns, and then the people who did try, but then they got slammed very, very hard and denied and they had that bad taste in their mouth, and that's how you get 14 million plus veterans who aren't rated, right?
Well, I mean, our goal here is to do our part and help a million of them. We're about to come out with an app where for 297 people can get our workbook, an app they can all the younger generation that is good at the tech and does feel like they got it, they can take that 297 and they can go through our bulletproof program and get themselves rated the same way that we would get them rated. Leaving time for this older generation. We're hoping that the young guys get in that app and get in the workbook and do their at least their own first round so we can help some of these older guys, before they pass on, before their families don't get their, survivor benefits and all of that. So I just really am excited that we talked today. I think there's some really big things that we can do together for the veteran community. And I appreciate you being on my podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and I'm definitely happy to be here. And if you ever want to do this again, let me know.
I definitely will because then we can maybe, maybe every other month we can just pick a topic and really dive deep on that one topic and get it out there to the veteran community. So again, thanks for joining me.
All right, thank you.
And now it's time to
Take out the trash.
First up, so excited, Mark Cuban, the creator of Shark Tank, made jaws drop, pun intended, when he recently outdid himself by generously distributing a fresh batch of alternative facts, I love that, when talking about Kamala Harris, the border, the media, and Donald Trump.
Whenever Donald Trump says something, everybody else has to explain for him what he said. It's all his acolytes, all his supporters saying, no, this is what he really meant. It's the opposite with Vice President Harris. When she says what she says, everybody knows what she means.
It is truly heartwarming to see someone with so many resources investing so heavily in good old-fashioned misinformation. Cuban's the Santa Claus of fabrication, delivering absurdity straight to your intellectual chimney while laughing all the way to the bank. Spreading lies is just his way of ensuring that even the truth has to work overtime.
Certainly does. Now, nothing like listening to a billionaire's paragons of wisdom that transcend the mundane struggles of everyday citizens. After all, who better to dispense political advice than a guy who lives in a universe where money isn't just a means to an end, but a tool he can use to bend reality to his will? Here's the reality, Mark. We are not better off than we were 4 years ago. And saying Kamala has been successful on the border, really, that's like saying a screen door is good at keeping out water. It's not. But where you really lost all credibility is when you said this.
The number one shows are all Fox. The number one podcast,
So
right.
Even in spite of that, she's been able to.
Not in spite of that, meaning, well, in spite of that, yeah. Okay. Meaning the mainstream media is not who you think it is. The mainstream media truly leans right.
Maybe.
Even Rachel Maddow's mullet couldn't believe you said that. Saying the media leans to the right is like saying a fish prefers to ride a bicycle, completely contrary to its nature and utterly absurd.
Newsflash, the media is full of liberal hot air as you are. The reason Fox News is so popular is because the majority of Americans don't trust mainstream media because of its blatant bias and it's lost all credibility, and now you're tanking your credibility as well. I think you're saying these stupid things because you're jealous of Trump and Elon Musk, both of whom are getting attention for speaking the truth, and your show, well, tanking.
So I'm going to help you out. Challenge Musk to a debate. This was her idea. One of Dana White's octagons. Then you can finally get the airtime you so desperately crave, but the difference is you will actually get fact-checked, unlike the media enablers giving you your platform to spew that garbage. So, Mark Cuban,
you trash. Next up, California Senator Scott Weiner.
Close friend and ally of Kamala Harris, these are some of the bills he is behind. One that penalizes parents who don't affirm a child's trans identity. One that removes an out-of-state child from their parents if they travel to California to get a gender transition.
One that reduces penalties for offenders who sodomize children as young as 14. One that reduces a penalty for deliberately spreading AIDS. And one that requires prisons to put men in female prisons if they claim to feel like a woman. And no surprise, Weiner hails from San Francisco.
First of all, what is with creepy senators being named Weiner? Did we even learn anything from the other Weiner, Anthony? And I'm not saying pedophiles have a certain look to them, but I would rather trust my kid with Michael Jackson than this guy. And should we really be taking parenting advice from a guy who wears this out in public?
Mr. Weiner, since you're not a parent, let me fill you in. Children are not smart enough to make their own decisions. Mine is the smartest kid I know, and even he tried to recently eat paint chip because he thought it was candy. Under Democrat rule, gone are the days of bedtime tantrums and vegetable standoffs. They're taking us to an era where Junior is not just the apple of your eye, but also the ruler of your household. Why not just change timeouts to time-ins, where kids are encouraged to feel their feelings while watching an endless array of YouTube videos? Here's a thought. Keep government mandates out of the home. My home. You say you're pro-choice, but apparently that doesn't apply to a parent's choice on how to raise their own damn child.
And while you're at it, let's not make it easier for predators to assault children. I mean, you think that's a good idea? I mean, I know you liberals want to reduce the prison population by letting criminals walk free, but letting men into women's prisons probably will not accomplish that.
Weiner and his woke culture posse make it so that standing up for common sense has suddenly become transphobic. You know what I'm phobic of? Children being sodomized by predators, sex trafficking, kids under 18 going across state lines to get sex changes, making gender so inconsequential it's just a choice now.
As a parent and someone who believes in protecting children, you, sir, are a menace to society. So, Mr. Weiner, you're trash.
That ain't right. No. I'ma lead you to the light.